Hello friends, I'm Akash, and during these uncertain times of our generation, everybody is thinking about the word vaccine. But where does the word vaccine come from? And how was the vaccine even invented? Well, let's take a look at the brief etymology and the history of the vaccine. It all started with one of the worst viruses of all time, smallpox. Smallpox was a contagious and very lethal virus that would cause fluid-filled blisters on people's skin, alongside flu-like symptoms. It was very deadly. Now, previously, if you were infected with smallpox, that was it. You would die. It used to be like this until 1798, and I'll get to that later. But more importantly though, if you weren't infected, there were only two ways to make sure that you wouldn't get infected. One was to stay far away from anybody else with smallpox, and the other was a practice from the 10th century AD, immunizing yourself with smallpox. Because apparently, one way to prevent smallpox at the time was to get smallpox, or at least a little bit of it. This technique was called variolation, and it was considered highly unsafe. And by the way, the Chinese practiced the 15th century method apparently called nasal insufflation, in which they would basically blow smallpox scabs up the nostrils, which is why it's called insufflation. It's a rather weird process, but they had to do it like that, otherwise it wouldn't be prevented. This type of method where they use smallpox to prevent smallpox turns out to be a major plot point in the history of the vaccine. Anyway, this meant that there was no safe and successful vaccine at the time. Safe and successful are the two key words here. Regardless, the word vaccine wasn't even created anyway at that time. But there was apparently an accidental vaccine that nobody really realized was actually a really good idea. Turns out, dairy workers somehow did not get smallpox at all. Why? Well, turns out they had contracted a different disease from the cows they worked with. When British apprentice surgeon Edward Jenner learned of this in the 1760s, he named that disease Variolae vaccinae, which is Latin for smallpox of the cow. Variolae was simply a variation of the word variola, meaning smallpox, and vaccinae was a word that came from vacca, meaning cow. So, soon enough, he started working on a potential way for smallpox prevention via Variolae vaccinae, and in 1796, he tested it. So basically, he took a Variolae vaccinae infected pus and scratched it on the arm of an 8-year-old boy named James Phipps. 6 weeks later, he inoculated the boy with smallpox and observed that he didn't get infected at all with smallpox. Finding this test to be successful, he decided to start extending his studies. And so, 2 years later, in 1798, Jenner reported that his vaccine of Variolae vaccinae, now known as cowpox, was completely safe and successful in both children and adults. And with this, the world was changed forever. In 1840, this old variolation method of using smallpox to prevent it was completely banned in England because of its extreme danger, especially when compared to this new cowpox method. And by the 1940s, most of the world didn't even have smallpox anymore. By 1977, smallpox was completely eradicated worldwide. And this success story of defeating the smallpox is the reason we call vaccines as vaccines. Why? Because in reality, it derives from the Latin word vacca, meaning cow, the same root featured in Variolae vaccinae, the name Edward Jenner gave to cowpox. So, first of all, Cows helped save millions of human beings in the invention of the first ever vaccine. So, thank you, cows. We humans are indebted to you. And second, we all should be so thankful to the pioneer, Edward Jenner, whose smallpox vaccine, variole vaccine, changed the world. Since then, our scientists have developed vaccines for many diseases, like tetanus, pneumonia, whooping cough, measles, typhoid, chickenpox, hepatitis A and B, and influenza, which is, well, the flu shot. But we do not have a vaccine for the current pandemic of our times, the coronavirus disease 2019, also known as COVID-19. Currently, our scientists are working very hard to create the COVID-19 vaccine in order to protect all of us. We all should be so thankful for these amazing scientists who are working day and night for all of us. So, join me in praying to God for the success of these scientists for all humanity. In the meanwhile, don't go outside, stay inside, and follow social distancing. Moreover, just stick to government orders regarding the coronavirus pandemic. Thank you so much, everyone. Love you. Akash.